Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world watching this webinar. My name is James O'Brien. I'm the Operations Director of iIntro, and I'm joined on this webinar today by the Sales Director of iIntro, Darren Ledger. Darren, how are you this morning?
I'm very good. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're going to enjoy the content we're about to cover.
Absolutely. We've been delighted with the response that we've received from people who wish to attend our webinar. We feel very honoured that you wish to listen to us share our thoughts and views. And so I just want to take you through the topics that we'll be covering today. The main theme of this was really about how we can look at turning the current recruitment boom into long-term profit. Now, before I go into the start of this, I just want to apologise. A lot of the references we may make will just be to the UK, but they do generally, relates to the broader market. So if we make some specific UK references, please forgive us, but try and translate them and turn them into what that might mean in your specific market if you're outside of the UK, which I know many people will be today. So we're going to cover 3 or 4 key topics, around this boom, and people saying, the boom has started, and we're certainly seeing a lot of evidence of that. So we're going to talk to you, what the challenges that we might face, when the boom ends. We'll talk about when we think that might be. We'll talk about how you need to address your current fill rates and look to, improve those to generate more income. And then obviously, one of the lessons we see, there are a lot of busy fools out there, people who are, extremely busy, but actually not highly productive. So we want to look at the difference there. And then we'll end with just our thoughts on what we believe are some of the key mistakes that people can make. But we'll hopefully, Darren, try and cover off most of that. So we'll have some ramblings, I think, Darren, between you and I about the state of the recruitment market, because between us, I think we've probably got about 60 years experience. In the recruitment sector itself, so quite a lot. So Darren, why don't you just, I know you've got a couple of things you want to say, because here we sit, effectively post-pandemic. I know it's still raging in various parts of the world, but we can start to see the end of that particular thing. But what are your thoughts on how the recruitment industry itself has coped with the past 12, 18 months?
Astonishingly good. I think we're very privileged, James. We get to see inside and understand a lot of recruitment businesses, unlike a lot of other recruitment business owners do, of course. And I think the industry deserves a huge round of applause. In the UK, the USA, and everywhere where we go to speak to people, I think people have adapted, innovated, completely overhauled their service offering proposition, the way that they deliver recruitment solutions and strategies and capabilities like never before. And you just said we've got 60 years combined. I think this is unprecedented times in terms of the challenges that the industry has overcome. And I think it generally deserves a huge round of applause.
It does, Aaron. I think they are unprecedented times, and what that will lead us into, it leads into opportunities, because when you've been around as long as we have, we've seen the booms and busts. We've seen the ups and downs, the highs and lows. And I think it's important that no matter how much experience you've got, you are prepared to be open-minded and to think about how you can drive things forward. And I think that's what we've seen in the past year, from our perspective. A lot of people using that time, because in certain industries, in certain sectors, there was a lot of downtime in the past year, as well as been some fantastic performances, as we see. But I think it's people looking to see how they can adapt their business going forward. So, Darren, what are our views? And I'll put some things up after this slide, in terms of some of the areas that we think people need to be aware of. But what do you think about this surge? First of all, how long do you think it'll last?
Interesting question. I certainly think it's going to see us through 2021. There's a lot of discussion at the moment about things like the term I've heard used is the Great Resignation, for example.
Yeah.
When we say it's unprecedented times, what makes it particularly unusual is that a lot of organizations outside of the recruitment industry have had huge success during this pandemic. They've continued to make huge amounts of money. They've been very successful businesses. And that's what makes it very unusual. When you come out of something like a financial crisis, money's tight, businesses are tight, consumers aren't spending, businesses aren't investing. That's not what happened here. So we've kind of seen a situation where suddenly lockdown restrictions are being eased. Everybody's kind of rushing out to the market. There's lots of money around, both in the commercial world, but also in people's personal purses and things. And they're all spending it. There's a huge sense of optimism and confidence, especially in the UK at the moment.
Yeah.
So I was going to come back to the Great Resignation. I don't think we'll see that occur probably until Q1 next year. I think a lot of people knuckle down, get on with their personal lives, take holidays, find some relaxation time, recover from the past 12 months. And then I think people again will start looking at, new jobs, new opportunities. And that will have a knock-on effect to the recruitment industry, of course. So it could go well into Q1, Q2 next year. Yeah,
Darren, and we both speak to a lot of recruitment business owners, as you mentioned. So, the general feeling at this moment in time, in not just the UK, broader than that, is overall there seems to be a lot of opportunity out there. Is that what you're experiencing as well? Is that what you're hearing about?
It's certainly what I'm getting in terms of feedback from the people I'm speaking to.
Do you think are all sectors, are all people feeling it, or do you think there are some areas where it's still tough?
I think where the toughness is what we're hearing is candidate shortage. Apparently there's an abundance of candidates, but there's not an abundance of the right candidates.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a sense of conservatism in a lot of organizations where they're not necessarily willing to compromise. They want precisely the right kind of new employee for the roles that they have. But hopefully we'll see some change on that, and we'll see some organizations at least start to kind of say, look, we can modify things, we can adapt things, we can train people and upskill people into the roles that we need to fill.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunity for both recruiters and hopefully candidates moving forward.
Yeah, I suppose I just want to make it clear that we do know that it's not all good times for everybody out there, and there are still some people who are starting to hope to see this surge when it's coming. And obviously, we talk about the bounce back in the economy, but there is still a little bit of hesitation that we see in the market. And I suppose we think things will start to open up in Q3 even more so, which is why you're saying this surge will go on, certainly see us through the rest of 2020. But what are the other key challenges that you see out there, Dan? I'll put some up on screen just for people to So I said that point I was just talking about there. Business is still tough, but what are the other things? The other things we put up on screen there. People need to look out for, because they are going to be really busy, but they've got to look at their productivity, don't they? And you talk about the Great Resignation, which is really covered in that point number 3 there. So again, just help people out. What do you mean by the Great Resignation? Just give a bit more explanation on
that. There's a number of different facets to this. A lot of people are being very well looked after by their organisations, even if they've been furloughed. And yes, there's been huge government support there in the UK, particularly. Companies have topped up their income. They've nurtured them. They've made sure they're okay. They've looked after them if they've been trapped at home all the time. And I think a lot of people feel a sense of gratitude for that, if that's the right term.
Yeah.
And whilst 12 months ago, they may have been thinking about looking for a new career or a new opportunity or switching jobs, I think now they feel as if they kind of owe their employers a little bit of loyalty.
Yeah.
So I think that will dissuade a lot of people from making a move right now. And I think that feeds through to the whole kind of scenario, essentially. I think people will hold fast. And I think we'll see a lot of that activity begin come the new year in January, which traditionally has always been the case, of course.
So I think we're going to talk about, in terms of, what do we think that people can do to sort of, prevent that or mitigate it as much as they can?
Are we talking about recruitment businesses here, for example?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that's being spoken about more and more often, especially in places like LinkedIn, for example, and social media circles, people want training.
Yeah.
I think there's been a little bit of a stagnation in the recruitment industry over the past few years. And I think you've got to start moving into areas of professional development. There's a guy I've been speaking to recently called Niall Oviatt, and their business has decided to invest, I think it's about 5% of their profits after EBITDA, into each individual recruiter's personal and professional development. And they can go and do any kind of course they want, whether it's directly linked to recruitment or otherwise. And I'm hearing a lot of businesses now focus on this. And I think that's one key way of keeping your employees engaged, keeping them happy and hungry, and hopefully keeping them within your business.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be one big challenge that we see, because in all this business that's out there, the reality is there's going to be there's opportunity for employers, the opportunity or the belief they have that they can actually squeeze recruiters. Are you hearing any of that sort of coming into the marketplace?
I'm hearing a lot of that. I was speaking to a company last week down in Gloucestershire area that work in the IT sector. And they've now had three pretty large technology implementers, integrators come to them and say, we're overhauling all of our procurement, our services. We've got procurement consultants in, and they're telling us we need to reduce fees. And as much as we like our clients, we have to remember that ultimately at the end of the day, they're a commercial enterprise. If they think they can get something for less and they can cut costs and overheads, they will do it regardless of how much they like you as their recruiter.
Yeah.
The challenge at the moment, James, sorry, without going to a massive tangent, as we know, there are more recruitment firms than ever. So clients have got more choice than ever. Yeah. There's a lot of recruitment businesses, especially the new ones, and they're competing solely on fees. So they're helping drive the price down.
Yeah.
Which I think is a significant challenge.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that, but I say that the problem with being really busy, particularly if you're working in the contingent space, is you are running around like a headless chicken, trying to think about, which role can I fill, and take more and more work in the vain hope sometimes that you are going to sort of drive that through. And I think, what we're trying to do through this webinar, Darren, is just give people some advice on how to, de-risk some of these areas that we'll talk about, because there are certain things that do get in the way. But, what you've got to look out for is in all this busyness, you hope to get to the end of the year and breathe a whew. And then you look back at your bank balance and think, well, maybe I'm not doing as busy as I thought, because there will be that pressure, downward pressure on fees. The big guys are going to sort of swamp the market in some cases. And if you're a small player, and that's many of the clients that we speak to are what I'd call modest-sized recruitment businesses, you've got to think about what you can do to address some of these areas so that you don't get caught in the trap of just thinking that, it's all going to be good forever and it's all okay. It's not. You've got to work hard. Business is stuff. You've got to actually go out there and differentiate yourself in a different way. And I think what we see is there are certain things that get in the way, Darren, in terms of things that people are doing, and sometimes about doing the wrong things. And we'll talk about some of those as well. We talk about the Great Resignation, but actually look at your team. You need to look at the team of people that you've got there, because sometimes, you may have been loyal to them, they may have been loyal to you, but are they the right team members? Are they going to help you get what you need? If you keep on doing what you've always done, Darren, as we say, you'll get what you've always got. And you've got to look to innovate, and you've got to look at the people. Are they capable of moving with you? And the final point I've got on that slide there, Darren, just appreciate your thoughts on this. The wrong type of clients. Having clients. When you talk about that, the way that IT company, I was speaking to somebody else recently, and they were just telling me, it's the commoditization of recruitment, procurement. They're treating it like as if you're just sort of buying pencils, and it's not that type of service. But that's the way a lot of organisations think. So you've got to choose your clients, so that and choose clients who respect you for what you do. And again, we'll talk around those. Have you got any thoughts, Darren, on any of those points up there?
Yeah, I mean, doing the wrong things, I'll probably change that to doing the right things really well.
Yeah.
And I've been having a conversation this morning about this. Sometimes I think people have forgotten some of the very basic fundamental things that we have to do as recruiters. And talking about being kind of busy headless chickens, I don't like the term, busy fools. I don't think it's appropriate, but it's little things like, it's like qualifying an actual vacancy or qualifying the vacancies your client's giving you. And you have to press them and push them for their level of commitment. And it's very simple stuff, this. It's kind of, Mr. Client, if I had the perfect candidate right now that could start on Monday, would you make them an offer? Obviously subject to an interview. And if you get pushback from that and say, well, you need to test the urgency they've got, the commitment to the process you're going to deliver for them. Do they really want these people, and will they actually hire them if you find them? Yeah. There are still lots of clients out there that are shopping, they're testing the market, they're having a little bit of a look around. We're never going to know how that's going to pan out until we get maybe to the end of quarter 3, quarter 4, and we see the reality of how tangible this busyness or this surge really is.
Yeah. Well, I sort of quite like the phrase, Darren, doing more of the right things. And I think it comes back to something else you said earlier, which is about training. We'll come on to that a little bit later on as well, because I think it is critical there. But I think the challenge in terms of, when I say poorly chosen team members, you have to decide what type of business are you? Are you a 360 recruiter? Do you have a business development function, a delivery function, a resourcing function, whatever it may be? But it's about making sure the right people are doing the right jobs in your organization. And sometimes, the churn that we see in the recruitment market is such that, think, well, why can't we get it right? And I don't think we objectively look at what it is that we're trying to do. This statistic, Darren, but from an organization called Leadership IQ, they say that 46% of new hires fail within the first 18 months. Now, 18 months is actually quite a long time. A lot of that failure happens before then, and that failure can be in terms of performance. It can be in terms of just hanging on to people, because you want the bum on the seat. You've got to sort of look at what type of person you're looking for, and if there is such a high failure, what can you do to start, improving on that? And so I think we have to look at our own businesses as well, Darren, in this search. Not just as we've been looking at it. Don't just take anybody. Choose the right people. Make sure that our own selection processes actually are there to help us put the right people in the right places. And the wrong type of clients, Darren. I sometimes say to clients that we work with, listen, if you've got bad clients, look in the mirror. We're focused on helping organizations transition into retained recruitment, and the job there is to say that retained recruitment, we'll talk about later, it's not for everybody, of course, and not every client is going to buy a retained recruitment service. But if that's where you're pitching, choose the clients who respect you for what you do. It comes back to your qualification point there, Darren. You've got to ask the right questions so that you understand, from the client perspective, are they serious about this hiring, and are they serious about hiring somebody who's going to be the best person in the job, not just any old person that they can sort of pick up off a database. So I think we'll sort of talk about that. So there are things that get in the way for people, and they need to sort of be careful of that. Darren, in a lot of our marketing that we put out there, we'll talk, and in our training, to be fair, we talk a lot about fill rates. So what are your thoughts on why we keep banging on about fill rates?
I don't have any. I'm joking.
And thanks for attending.
Yeah, it's really important. I think you use the real life experience, James, from your Executives Online days. And sorry, I'll let you explain that first, because it's a superb point and a great reference.
Yeah, I mean, we've been banging on about it for a long time. And, I remember running an event for our team, and there were probably 30, 40 people in the room. And this was back in 2012. And, the financial crisis was still in the rearview mirror. There's still things happening in the recruitment market. And I was concerned about our productivity in terms of what we did. And I asked our team, so 30 or 40 people in there, I said, what do we think our fill rates are? And to qualify, I said, what I mean by that is how many vacancies we're working on to make one placement. And the old wise heads around the room said, well, I think mine's 1 in 2, 1 in 3. Very good. Some couple of people sort of dared to venture to, well, I think I actually have to work on 4 or 5 vacancies. And so then I said, well, listen, guys, we have a CRM system, and one of the benefits of that, I generate some statistics from it. And in the prior year, I said, we filled 10% of the roles that we took on board. I know, a bit of harumping in the room. Well, some of those vacancies weren't really real. And the reason why I'm saying this story, because I think it's relevant to the surge that we're seeing today. You can make yourself really busy, but find that you're very unproductive. And that's what we were as an organization. We were an unproductive organization. And people take on, particularly this is when I go say, looking at your team members, people take on lots of roles to say, I'm really, really busy. The pipeline's amazing. It's going to look really good, boss. But the reality is, you've got to look at those type of roles. Are they the type of roles that you can fill and that you want to fill? I think that's the important thing there. And having, as we had a 10% fill rate, and this is a question we ask everybody, Darren, that we sort of connect with. We ask them to think about what are their current fill rates. And when they carefully look at, how many vacancies that, we tell them to go back to their CRM system. How many vacancies did you put through your system last month, last quarter, last 6 months, last year? And how many invoices did you raise? And it's eye-opening for many people. And again, you get the self-justification. I've done it. You try and justify why you took on that role. You thought you could do it, thought you're going to get there. But the reality is that productivity is a massive waste. And that's what I see happening in this surge. People chasing vacancies to make themselves feel really busy. And then they'll look back afterwards, as I did, and find, what? Wow, that's a lot. So. And why was I looking back? Because we weren't performing. We weren't delivering that performance that we wanted to. And so fill rates really matter, Darren, because saying you've got to ask yourself the question, why do we work for free? Now, I hope the people listening to this call are either not working for free or looking at ways to see how can I improve my own fill rate because I want to stop working for free. And the general statistic that we don't use my 10% statistic, Darren, because people get a little bit upset about that. We typically will use a statistic which says, 1 in 5, 20%. And so the thought we want to give people, and it's a question for you, Darren, what your thoughts on it. Imagine, when you're a recruiter, having 3 to 4 days per week of free time, what would you do differently in light of recruitment? What would you do?
Wow, you've got a lot of points there, James. I mean, this, I'm not going to answer that specific question, but this comes back to, again, doing the right things. I think it's an incredibly complex market at the moment. The things that we're hearing and seeing and the conversation at the moment is there's a lot of counter offer activity going on. There are a lot of people declining offers at the offer stage. So this comes back to qualifying candidates properly in the first place. You need to qualify the vacancies properly, and then you've got to qualify the candidates properly. And I'm going to use something that Neil Carberry from the REC states all the time. Candidates today, because we're virtual hiring in a lot of ways, a candidate can go from being initiated into an actual vacancy process on a Monday and having an offer by Friday. Their investment in that whole process is very, very little these days. So it'd be interesting to see, once we get to the end of kind of quarter 3, quarter 4, how many recruiters, if they're monitoring this and if they're measuring this, how many recruiters are losing or having a reduced fill rate because they're losing candidates at the back end of the process and maybe having to start again or losing the whole vacancy. But to answer your question about the 3 or 4 days per week, you know my thoughts on this, James. I would rather work on 4 or 5 vacancies that I have complete control and working exclusively or retained at different stages of a process than be spending 2 or 3, 4 days a week working on vacancies I've probably a very remote chance of actually earning any return on investment from. What would I do with those additional 3 or 4 days? I'd invest that time in marketing, business development. I'd invest that time in going to conferences and things and getting back to doing the things that used to be successful before.
Yeah, and so I'm not saying it's going to be free time. I think what you said there, and you answered it really, really well, is that what you do is you'd use that time to do the job that you're being paid to do better. It's about a process, isn't it?
I'm going to enhance that statement. I think you'd use that time to do the things that we used to love doing. And now we often find ourselves, or a lot of recruiters find themselves in a situation where they don't have that time. If you go back to when we first came into the industry, James, we were monitored on doing certainly my early days, on doing 6 client visits a week.
Yeah.
And you jump in the car and you go meet clients all over your region, new clients, existing clients. And I think sometimes that's fallen by the wayside because we're so busy running around and chasing remote fees with remote chances of actually realizing them. And I'd love recruits to get back to doing the really good stuff that we all enjoy, which is people stuff, communication, getting out there amongst it.
I mean, the thrill of placing people, I still, I'm not a day-to-day recruiter in that way anymore, but the thrill I used to get of placing people, knowing that you're sort of helping them change their lives. I mean, people might think, oh, I'm a bit soppy there, James, but I really, really meant that. When you place people, when you've done a great job with a great client, and I think it is getting back to doing the things. And I think that the point I'm trying to make here for people is, be critical of yourself, look back at what you're doing and say, why did I really take that job on? Why did I think, I'd actually sort of, find a person for it? Yeah, so I think that's what we've got to do. So I think what this is all around, is saying, there are systems and processes that you need to put in place, Darren. And what we need to look at, and you just touched on some of the things you do with that extra time. And so here are some of the thoughts that we've got up here, because if you're going to, go out there into the marketplace and hope to be different, then you've got to have a voice. Yeah, and we'll talk about business development later as well, Darren. And there's a lot of things out there that are catching people's attention, text catching their attention, training and coaching. But why do you think all of these things are important today?
Wow, talk about me put on the spot. Digital marketing strategy. The world of business development has changed beyond recognition now. I was having this conversation with Maria, our head of marketing, the other day. Nobody's actually sat in an office at a desk with a desk phone. The original challenge that most recruiters had historically was getting past gatekeepers.
Yeah.
There are no gatekeepers anymore, because you're literally either trying to get through to somebody's email or you're trying to get through to somebody on a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And very few people during the working day will answer their mobile phone from an unknown number. For lots of reasons, but predominantly because we get so many spam phone calls these days and things, yeah? So I think digital marketing strategies are really important. But what I'm seeing on LinkedIn sometimes, I'm going to be very frank here, sometimes it irritates me. It's so totally sales focused. And, it's the old adage, you've got to give to receive.
Yeah.
Engage people, provide insight, provide advice and guidance to the solution, to the problems they've got, offer them the solutions that they need, and engage them and draw them towards you, because you become an expert in your field, so to speak, as opposed to buy my services, buy my services, buy my services, James.
Well, I think, Darren, I mean, I went to, and I've updated this recently, but probably 5 or 6 years ago, I went to an event by LinkedIn, and they were talking about, having a content marketing strategy and, digitizing and all of that type of thing. And it was fascinating at the time. And it was a, statistic that I've carried with me to this day. And what they were saying at that time is that 65% of buying decisions are made before the prospect contacts you. And what they were saying is you need to have this content, you need to make the information available to people so they can understand what it is that you do, because people no longer want to be sold to. They want to buy on their terms. I'm not talking terms and conditions, but buy on their terms when they're ready. And recently I was at another event, and the statistic has now increased. And it's called the blurring of marketing and sales. And you can't ignore marketing nowadays, because you've got to have a really strong strategy that's going to help position you, as you said, as a go-to expert, as an authority in your marketplace. You can come up with whatever name you want for this one, but you've got to have something that enables and facilitates prospects to view you, because they're looking at you anyway. Yeah, so you've got to make sure you give them the information. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's about telling them about what you do, how you do it, why you do it, the successes you had, the challenges you help solve for organizations, your case studies, your testimonials, all of those things that are out there, because the buying process nowadays for individuals as well as organizations is very different to what it was 20 years ago. And so that gatekeeper analogy you gave just then was great, because it used to be, we used to run training courses on how to get past the gatekeeper.
Exactly.
Yeah, remember those days. So yeah, having a good content strategy is a critical part of what you're doing. What about technology, Darren? Technology for technology's sake, keeping up with the journey?
Yeah, it's a complex one, isn't it, technology? I speak to lots of people. I'm not going to name them, but there's a firm in Manchester, and in the past 10, 11 months, they've invested in a new CRM system, they've invested in a video interviewing solution, and they've invested in a new telephony system. And integrating all of this stuff, actually getting all their team to get on board with all of this and create the buy-in for that, has proved to be an absolute nightmare for them. And they are the first people to admit, and they did admit this to me, they've seen no discernible return on investment in all of this technology they've invested in. You've got to have tech. We're virtual now, yeah. But I think people are getting excited about anything that's got the term AI attached to it, when it literally isn't AI. It may be a smart algorithm, it may be smart technology, it's not artificial intelligence. And people are buying stuff almost because it's a fashion accessory for their business. But I'm not convinced they're actually testing the market first and going to their clients and saying to them, if I buy this technology, are you going to pay me higher fees? Are you going to give me more exclusivity? Are you going to retain me? Where's my return on investment? And I think people really need to look at that very closely before they start buying, investing stuff.
I think return on investment is an important one. And what about training and coaching, Darren? I think you touched on it.
We touched on this already. It's absolutely critical. There's a bit of a tangent, but it does come back to this, James. I think I read somewhere there's about 8, maybe 9,000 new recruitment businesses into the market in the past 10, 11 months. And this comes back to the previous slide as well, actually. But I think a lot of those people that have set as business independents will find themselves pulled back into the corporate world because they want the support, they want the resources, they want the training, coaching, the mentoring that's provided in an organizational setting. And that hopefully will be good for the industry, because we'll get some good people back into it. The people that have set up as independents, and of course we meet a lot of them through our discussions with our intro, a lot of them, the primary focus, the reason we're speaking to them is because they know where they want to go, but they don't know how to get there. And what they want from us, and there's some other great trainers and mentors out there, of course, and coaches that we collaborate with, what they really need right now is good guidance, advice, training, coaching, and leadership on actually how to get the business where it needs to be.
And I was talking with an organisation yesterday who operate in seven countries, a recruitment business, and they were saying how important coaching has become to them, particularly with the virtual world that we live in now, because that remoteness and that sense of belonging that you need to get. So I think in terms of putting things in place, and having good and strong systems and processes is a critical part of running any business. Now, Darren, we focus a lot on retained recruitment because that's the service that we promote ourselves. But what's your experience of why people can't sell retainers? You had a great line before, and I wonder whether you can remember it. And it's
Wow.
FOF, that's the clue. That's a little
Fear,
acronym.
yeah, fear of failure.
I need
Yeah,
you.
there's a number of reasons. You, imagine you've got a client that you've got a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year relationship with, and then suddenly you start propositioning them with a retained offering.
Yeah.
The fear there is that if they pay you a large chunk of money up front and then you dance off into the sunset to go and find them candidates, and you can't find those candidates, and the whole assignment kind of collapses around you, have you damaged the client relationship? Because what recruiters often don't realize is, and this is really important, if you fail to deliver, for you, it's a travesty because you've lost out on a fee and you may have damaged the client relationship. Your client may have to go into a board meeting and explain why he hasn't hit strategic goals, why he's got disruption within his team, why people are leaving the business, because you failed to recruit people for them. The onus falls on their shoulders for making that decision to give you a retained assignment in the first place. And you've always got to remember that if you do win retainers, you cannot afford to fail.
Yeah.
And I think and something else important here, James, it's something that concerns me quite a lot. A lot of recruiters out there at the moment selling retainers, and what they're actually giving is a contingent service.
I think it's a really important point, Darren. What
And
do you mean by that? They're just dressing up in a different way?
yeah, I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I don't think they actually understand that there's a significant, and it's not. This is not about the level of role, by the way. It could be £45,000 account manager.
Yeah.
If you take a retainer, the first stage payment, if that's how you've structured it, or the container, whatever you want to call it, that's not to go into the company's bank balance to pay salaries. Also, you can all go out on Friday and have a Wolf of Wall Street bash and get falling down drunk and off your face. That first stage payment, you need to be thinking about, how am I going to invest this to get the results and the outcomes and deliver the service that I promised my client?
Yeah.
I think that's often overlooked.
Yeah. I think some other reasons, Darren, in terms of why it comes up. So I think we'll come back to that point as well. And the reality is out there in the marketplace. You sort of touched on, the recruitment industry is so fragmented. And again, when we ask people to say, well, what are your USPs? They'll reel off a list of phrases which are just SPs rather than USPs. And so everybody sounds the same. And you've got to really sort of work really hard to create and generate a true USP so that you are a me only recruitment business rather than me too recruiter, which is what everyone's out there. And what you spoke about there, Darren, it really is that the value proposition. If you are going to sell retained, you have to have a value proposition that delivers on a set of deliverables that you've agreed with the client. It's not just about going out there to find a CV, because an employer can do that. You have to do things that an employer cannot do, or hasn't got the time to do. And that doesn't mean dipping into a database. It means going further than that. And then I think the other reason that I think, really critical is people aren't investing time and money on getting themselves trained. We've touched on this 2 or 3 times because it's a recurring theme, because it's really important. It's really important that people invest some time on getting through that. Because the reason why people are, in this business, they're looking to increase their profits. And if you want to increase your profits, Darren, you've got to do some things, and so we've got a 3-point plan up here. Stop. People should stop working for free. Why do people do it? It's because, well, that's the market, isn't it? That's, it's different in my market. That's the way it always works. Well, go find different clients. We said earlier, if you've got bad clients, look in the mirror. Yeah.
It's difficult because you've got to remember that a lot of recruiters don't have the choice, James.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've always found quite startling about the industry
is they don't have a choice. What do you mean they don't have a choice?
They're driven, or they're directed by the actual organizations they work for. It's the accepted norm. It's what they do. It's what they've always done. Yeah. But something I've always found quite startling about the industry is that recruitment businesses, and recruiters in particular, they're like magpies. They like bright, shiny things. The bigger a company is, the larger it is, the more excited a recruiter gets about actually recruiting for them. And I think that they're a little misguided there. Find the organizations that are growing quickly, that need to hire right first time, that don't have a talent acquisition team, that do not have internal capability beyond maybe HR, that want to use your services because you've got some professional expertise that they cannot source anywhere else.
Absolutely.
And this comes on to the proposition thing. Position yourself as a management consultant that provides talent acquisition solutions and solves problems, as opposed to have you got a vacancy? Here's some CVs.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Darren, you know, what we believe is that, you know, what you and I believe that is that does facilitate you increasing your fees. And we put out a recent bit of content, and it was quite controversial, because saying you can double your fees. We've put a part 2 out recently as well, because we were slammed in many ways, in the sense that people say, well, you know, you can't just, you know, you're ripping off your clients. And they'd missed the point. I mean, a few people got the point, thankfully. So we tried to, you know, help people understand what we're saying. We're going to say double your fees. They're going to say 15 to 30%. People said to us, we're in la land if we think, you know, you can charge 30% in this marketplace. Well, actually, when you think about the shortage of talent, why are you underselling, you know, the hard work that you've done to get there? But you've got to have a process. It's not just about, you know, slipping a CV over the fence, is it? You've got to put in what you said, which is you've got to have, you know, something that says, this is what we do, this is why you're paying me, I've invested this resource to get you this type of service to make sure you can hire the best person and that person will stay with you long term. So I think increasing fees is, you know, it's definitely something you can do, because, you know, again, when we get to look back in the rearview mirror, get paid properly for the work that you're doing. You know, and if you're selling a 15% service and it's providing a CV, well, good on you. Good on you. That's what it's worth. But if you're selling a consultative service, you know, where you're actually delivering a lot of extra benefits, your value proposition is being delivered, well, people will pay for that. People will pay for that. And it's not about ripping them off. Never been about ripping
James, look, this is really important, okay? Doing what we do as recruiters has never been more complex than it is today. And I'll give you a very good example. Organizations are now expecting us to be the people that deliver their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing lots of stuff where organizations are saying, we only want CVs or shortlists delivered from you if they are 50-50, or if they are fully representative of our community. Yeah. So the responsibility of recruitment businesses now has now increased significantly, mm-hmm. because we're doing that work for them as well, because they have to be able to evidence it. But what's important here, I think the reason that increase your fees, double your fees, often contentious. People think that what we're saying is double your fees for providing the same service. And that's not what we're saying.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you an example, an assignment I dealt with recently. You know, I got a retainer. I went to a global industry magazine, online magazine. I got a content writer to write me some pretty exciting content that was published in that magazine that supported and linked to the job advert and the organization. There's a lot of cost, there's a lot of additional time in that. And my clients have got to pay for it. And then when you put into the equation, things like behavioral assessments and profiling, video interviewing solutions, we're giving far more and we're charging more for that. It's got to be comparative. John Ruskin said, you cannot get more for less in business. It doesn't work, it's impossible.
And for the uneducated Darren like me, who's John Ruskin?
John Ruskin was an art critic, philosopher, and part-time economist. Look him up. The guy's phenomenal. He's very well worth reading and researching.
Yeah, and so I think the point you're making there is, we're not just saying you can't just, you've got to deliver value for what you do. And value's a bit airy-fairy, that one, isn't it? You've got to deliver specific information, services, support, whatever it happens to be, to make sure the client appreciates what you do.
Sorry, unless you're going to go into this, James, one other thing that I think is really important that I've done for maybe 18 years. I put my money where my mouth is. So yes, I may charge higher fees, but I give my clients far more in terms of insurance, of outcomes. I guarantee my placement, not a 90-day rebate period.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to when you're selling a retained service, Darren, what things you do. And, a lot of people, a lot of recruiters, listen, I was in this area myself in terms of looking for how can I do things differently, because I didn't, I wanted to sell retain. I probably, we'd sold retainers, Darren, or maybe the clients had bought them, but we probably weren't really delivering that service. I think that's sort of where I was. So, for anybody listening to this, what would help you understand is, if you want to sell retain, there's some things you need to do. You need to learn to sell. And I really do mean sell, because, again, I get a lot of flack on this one sometimes. Recruiters don't sell. They take orders. They take orders from the client saying, I want somebody with this type of experience, these type of skills, this type of knowledge, go find me. Yeah, so somebody goes and dips in a database, sends over a few CVs, and that's what a recruiter's life is now. Because when I first got my job, my first job in recruitment, I remember my business card. I remember those who used to have business cards, paper ones, recruitment consultant. Yeah, and yeah, we were taught to be consultative, but that's just been eroded over the years. And when you use that phrase a moment ago, consider yourself to be a management consultant who specializes in talent acquisition in your chosen sector. The type of person who helps organizations deliver the right type of solutions that meet their objectives. And if you're going to do that, you need to learn to sell properly. And if you want to do this, what you got to do is speak to somebody. Paul Hickey, who's the co-founder of iIntro, has got a lovely expression. If you want to get from A to B, well, ask the man at point B, don't ask the man at point A. So speak to people who've been there, done that, and can prove, because you'll come back to your point about return on investment later, Darren, prove that actually can do that. Yeah, the marketing and sales strategy, that blurring of the lines that I spoke about, that 80% of people there, if nobody knows what you do, you can't sell to them anymore. You can't ring them up. There's nowhere to ring. Cold calling is there. But I know you've got some views down on business development, so grab those thoughts. I'll talk about the last point for a second. Asking the right questions, being consultative, being somebody who understands, why the organization is hiring. If it's a procurement exercise where you're filling in forms to answer this, to get on the PSL, that's not, the service that we're talking about here. We're talking about, making a significant difference. So choose your organizations carefully, choose your clients carefully in terms of those. But Darren, I think got some thoughts about, the art of business development, really. That's the way I'm going to phrase it. Do you like me putting
I mean, I was counselling somebody the other day who's pivoting into an entirely new market, and I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm basically going to go through LinkedIn and create a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and then I'm going to start emailing them, trying to telephone them, this kind of stuff, connecting with them on LinkedIn."
Yeah,
and that's great, But I said to him, the market you're going into, between now and the end of the year, there are actually 4 conferences, exhibitions: London, Malta, Dubai, and I think it's Frankfurt, in the artificial intelligence, augmented reality, blockchain space. And I said, just register to attend them all. It's free to attend these things. You get all the delegate lists, you get all the news and insight. By the time you get around to it, you know which companies are growing really quickly, who's got major investment, and they're the business you need to target. Go and find them at the exhibitions and the conferences. Besides, James, what a great way to do BD. A week, 3 or 4 days in London, 3 or 4 days in Malta, 3 or 4 days in Dubai, 3 or 4 days in Frankfurt. If you win one client from each location, you've more than covered the expenses and the cost. What a great way to do BD.
And if you look after those clients, they become clients for years, in terms of, delivering a service that's exceptional. So that's good. But, that's retained, Darren. People still say, is there a place in the market for contingent recruitment?
Absolutely. It's critical. Somebody kind of jumped on me on LinkedIn for this the other day. When you look at sectors like healthcare, for example, hospitality, retail, you've got to have contingent recruitment there because it's so fast paced. Even the technology space, we know if you look at developers, engineers, this kind of thing, these guys can finish a project or resign from a job on Friday and have 4 offers on the table by Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's perfect for the contingent model. But if an organization is looking at building teams, entering new markets, growing in new directions, and they need strategic critical hires that have to be right first time, there's no better way to do it than retain, regardless of what level those roles are at.
Yeah, and that's, one of the phrases sometimes people always say to us, is it executive search? And of course it can be, but it's retained recruitment. It's delivering a service proposition to employers at any level. So you mentioned 40, 45,000 and above, and I think that's absolutely true, because then you look at the pyramid, the employment pyramid, all that massive people at the bottom doing the higher churn roles, more people doing the same thing. But as you start to go up that pyramid, then it just plays into the hands of retained recruitment. So there is the reason why I get a lot of flack, Darren, is because iIntro, we wrote a book called The Death of Contingency, which is a provocative article that we put. And if anybody wants to read it, well, it's on our website, and people can sort of access that from there if they wish. So Darren, I want to talk about the number 1 mistake to avoid. And I think we've spoken about a lot of things that people can do to avoid making mistakes. And there's no big reveal here. I'll just put it up on screen in terms of what people are, because I think we spoke about this before, allied and related to return on investment. But what are your thoughts on this?
I can't remember. What did we say? What did we say originally?
Well, I think
Buyer's remorse,
the reality is so many things out there for people to engage with, invest in, but people don't do enough research to make sure that, what do mean, you spoke about the organisation in Manchester, I think, who bought a CRM, some video tech and whatever else. And already they're feeling, when are we going to get the ROI on this one? What I've done is I've increased my costs and not get any benefit from it. So they haven't done the research to say, will this make a specific difference? And so that buyer's remorse is you then look back and you say, I don't know why I bought that. I don't know why I bought a CRM system, which cost me £90 per user per month. When I could have actually, I don't need all of bells and whistles. Actually, there's one at £30 a month or whatever it may be. You haven't done the research. Buyer's remorse is the number one mistake that novices make when they look back. And, we've been through these mistakes, Darren. You and I have made lots of mistakes in our career, and I'm sure we've got a few more left to make yet. But it's about learning from mistakes, and that's what we're trying to help people with here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another aspect of this, James, and just to cover technology for a moment, I've seen companies. There's a company called Pentire Group, based down in UK, a guy called Anthony Dan, who I've been looking to meet for about 4 weeks. But anyway, they've taken video and they've integrated it and developed it into such a way that it's great. They're doing something really different and they positioned it really differently. They haven't just taken video, which is good, and said, here we go, we've got some video. Yeah. You've got to understand how you're going to position it and how you're actually going to build it into your service proposition. Another thing about buyer's remorse, and we kind of touched on this earlier, according to the Recruitment Employment Confederation, staff turnover for consultants and managers in the recruitment industry is about 57% per annum. We're supposed to be the experts and the professionals at actually hiring and recruiting and evaluating people. Businesses need to stop knee-jerk hiring, and they really need to start evaluating the people they bring into the business. Where are they going to add value? What are the tangible skill sets that they've got? And think beyond just, I've got a desk, I need a recruiter, and here's an offer.
Yeah.
We need to start hiring better ourselves, and that, I suppose, comes back into buyer's remorse.
Yeah, and I think it's topical, isn't it? Recruiters aren't very good at recruiting for themselves, and I think it's one of the things we put on the very early slides. Hiring the wrong people or hanging on to the wrong team members. You've got to think about what you want from people to do. You've got to make your organisation a great place to work in as well. So I think there's some of those things. Darren, listen, we've had a nice run through, the challenges are out there to help people over, make sure they don't get to the end of the search and find that they haven't got what they want. Hopefully we've given people information. If anybody listening has any questions, you can please pop them into the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll gladly answer them now. Or you can email us, of course, and you've had to get to this webinar, you'll have seen various emails from us, so you can just respond to one of those. Darren, anything to sort of wrap up with in terms to ask, provide any further thoughts before we end this webinar?
Just to say, I'm extremely optimistic. I think the outlook is really positive. I think, contrary to what a lot of people said, I think the UK in particular, sorry for those coming in from somewhere else in the world, but I think the post-Brexit UK has the potential to be incredibly strong. So hopefully the surge will continue for longer than we anticipate. But now's the time to be preparing for when it does change, because you need to be ahead of the curve and ahead of the game.
And I think, for me, it's just to say to people, although you're busy, don't be the headless chicken, don't be the busy fool. I know you don't like that, Darren, but take stock of what it is that you're doing. Review your systems and processes. Review the people that are in your team. Review the service proposition that you offer to your clients, and go out there and understand and learn how to sell retained recruitment. So it's been fascinating to have everybody here. Of course, if you want to follow up any conversation with us, please do get in touch. We appreciate your time in attending this. And if you ever want to get in touch with us, just go to our website, iintro.com, and from there you can book some free time with us, which we'll do. We've made a recording of this particular webinar, so for anybody listening, we will make a link available to this so you can watch it again if you don't want to watch Netflix this weekend. Thanks very much for your time, Darren. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today. And nice to be with you. Thank you very much.